You're listening to The Luxury Item, the podcast on the business of luxury and the people and companies that are shaping the future of the luxury industry. Here's your host, Scott Kerr.
Over the last 4 months, the world economy has taken a hit due to a pandemic which has literally brought the wheels of economy to a standstill. Needless to say, the watch industry too incurred huge losses as COVID-19 directly impacted both manufacturing and sales, much like it did to most sectors and industries. World-renowned exhibitions such as Basel World Watches and Wonders, which will bring leading watch manufacturers from around the world on one platform where they showcase latest designs, had to be canceled or rescheduled to a future date. While retail sales have been nothing short of a nightmare, the watch industry is finding newer ways to connect with the target audience, newer platforms that will give the industry what it requires to look beyond COVID-19. Many brands are already engaging their audience and potential customer base on various online and social media platforms, which has, to some extent, helped them gain lost ground while building a new channel to reach out to customers. One of those digital avenues to sell is online auctions. Auction houses have been forced online to meet the demand of sellers, buyers, and collectors. While the level of drama and excitement isn't nearly the same as a live auction, the results so far have been quite impressive. And the new format is drawing a different audience, many of them under 40 years old. Some people still balk at buying a pair of designer loafers online and relish the tactility of trying an outfit on in person. But a $1.3 million Cartier jewel-encrusted bracelet or a $700,000 rare 18-karat gold Rolex watch all unseen? No problem. The COVID crisis has created many a new world, and buying blind is one of them. For those with deep pockets, the money is still there, and with buyers itching to spend, the industry has adapted fast. My special guest today on the Luxury Item podcast is an expert in the watch world and can talk about the shifts and trends that have surfaced in the industry. Rebecca Ross is a watch specialist at the world's top auction house Christie's, which she joined in 2014. After achieving a master's degree from Christie's education, specializing in history of art and the art market, Rebecca Ross's appreciation of art expanded to include timepieces, having been exposed to the artistry of clocks and watches from an early age through her father's collection. She travels the world wide to find the rarest timepieces to add to various Christie's auctions throughout the year, and in addition manages client wish lists on a private sale basis. Rebecca holds a degree in classical civilization from the University of Leeds in the UK and was awarded a certification from the Fondation de Haute Horlogerie in fine watchmaking in April 2015. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, I'm catching you at a good time because I think Christie's just finished the summer auction season, from what I understand.
Yeah, we had a wonderful summer auction season. It did just finish, so this is a great time to be on and talk to you about it. We had, in the month of July alone, 23 dedicated luxury auctions, which span jewelry, watches, wine, and handbags. It's pretty incredible what we've seen as an increased value threshold for transacting online, as you can imagine.
Right.
I'll just give you a little example from the jewelry department because it was incredibly impressive. They sold a 28.86 carat emerald cut diamond for 2.1 million online.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that a record?
I don't know if it's a record for them, but it's certainly incredible to see how, sight unseen, these luxury items are still reaching such a high threshold.
Yeah, I was just actually talking about that, and in the opening, how it's incredible how consumers, you think about 10 years ago, they would never buy something like that, wouldn't even consider to buy something like that sight unseen, and now it's part of the norm. They have the money and they want to do it.
Yeah, and Luxury Week in Geneva had registered bidders from 42 countries across 6 continents, and in Hong Kong, specifically for watches, we following our record-breaking sale of the Patek Philippe 2523 last autumn. This season, we were thrilled to achieve an auction record again for a Patek Philippe. In the 5033 and 2524/1. I don't know how in depth your listeners are to reference numbers, but
some might be.
And so, yeah, exceptional results, really strong global participation. And it's really a testament to our continued leadership and just offering the finest timepieces.
I know we're going to talk about watches and timepieces with Christie's, but one of the things that caught my eye was that Christie's was auctioning off 11 pairs of Nike Air Jordans actually worn by Michael Jordan during his time with the Bulls and also signed as well. Did that happen already, or is that coming up?
It's happening at the moment, actually. It ends on August 13th, so that's next week. It is a new collecting category within our landmark sales. We called it Original Air, and it represents the greatest collection of historic Michael Jordan footwear ever auctioned at one time. So yeah, it's really exciting, and I can't wait to see the results.
So what are they saying it's going to go for?
It's still to be determined. I think we'll have to see how it goes. There's definitely a lot of strong interest, and it's nice because this new collecting category is bringing collectors that perhaps haven't transacted with Christie's before. You know, it's a whole new category for us and for them.
Right. That's a great idea. It obviously will bring in a younger audience who perhaps don't have experience with auctions.
Exactly, yeah.
So I know bidding also just closed on the Watches Online, the collector's edition. How did that perform, and what were some of the top sales, and what does that focus on?
Yeah, we just finished our Watches Online sale for July, and we actually have maybe 5 or 6 throughout the year. It performed very well, as to be expected. During the pandemic, we have had really good online sales, so we did anticipate a good sale. It began on July 22nd and it ran for 2 weeks, so it finished yesterday on August 5th. It's nice that it runs for 2 weeks because then bidders get the chance to really take their time, look at the watches over the course. There's a wide range available from $2,000 to over $150,000, various brands and various complications. And it did really well. There was 40 countries participating. The top lot of the online sale was by FP Jaune, and it was a platinum octa automatic, which achieved over 162,000. So just to put it in perspective, there were 24 competitive bids, and the estimate was 30,000. So.
And were there a lot of unusual timepieces in that one? Or
Yeah. I mean, there was a range that was really the top, the highlight of the auction. But we had Patek Philippe and Rolex as usual, Omega, Breitling, and some independent watchmakers such as Vianney Halter and B&F. So there's a lot of variety.
And at the same time, Christie's had their rare watch sale in Geneva, and that was the first live auction in Switzerland since the lockdown. So how did that work out, and how were they? I guess they were socially distancing in the sales room, I would imagine.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, of course, safety measures come first, and it was definitely different. Geneva is the hub for our watch sales, so we're used to having a packed sale room, and we actually had the watches for preview before the sale, so clients can come and take a look and try them on. And both were socially distanced in the view and in the sale room. And I think considerably less participants came, but the sale was still strong, and I think that just shows you that nowadays collectors are buying luxury items sight unseen, and I think that's a testament to their trust in us to give them what they want.
Yeah, I think one of the most exciting things for me, the first time that I've experienced an online auction, I think it was about a month ago, Christie's had that 4-venue Global One sale. And if you could talk about that whole format, the idea behind it, it was like a Twitch for upscale adults. Where you're actually watching, I'll let you describe it, but it's this relay format. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, for those that don't know, the One auction, as we called it, was the first of its kind. It was a global 20th century art auction, which spanned 4 cities in a relay style format. It took part on July 10th. It was a multi-part live sale, but it took part in real time across Hong Kong, Paris, London, and New York. So online, the auctioneer is going from one city to the next.
Right. It started out in Hong Kong, right?
Yeah, and then it moved to the different cities, and all sorts of things could have gone wrong. I mean, glitches on the internet, and
Right.
who knows what else. But actually, it did exceptionally well, and it was a very innovative idea, something completely new. And I just think it's really important, and it's proof of concept that an investment in digital enhancement is really the way forward.
And the most interesting thing for me, which kept me engaged, were the auctioneers.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, a live auction, if you haven't been already, it should be a spectacle. The auctioneer is in effect the stage man, and it's fun, and it should be engaging, and it should be exciting, and that's what I think that we strive to keep.
Yeah, even the way they interacted with each other sort of made it almost like watching a show.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's switch over to the watch industry. You know, the Swiss watch industry has been hit hard by COVID, and the recent statistics from the Federation of the Swiss watch industry show that exports dropped 62% between April and June. Do you think the worst is over for the Swiss watch industry?
Well, in the beginning, the 2020 production halt for modern Rolex and Patek and others, I think will have and is having an interesting effect. The manufacturing facilities had to close during the crisis, and they still remain closed, as do many global distribution centers and local offices, with no official timelines yet for reopening. And I think we're still in the thick of it. I don't think we're quite over the hill yet to be able to forecast what will happen next. But especially in the auction world, there are some positive trends that we see now that I think will continue in the future.
What are some of those trends?
Well, there has already been a demand in vintage timepieces over modern timepieces, and I think that is stronger than ever. I also think there is a new interest in what I call other brands, so not necessarily the top three, which are Patek, Rolex, and Audemars Piguet, but now there's more interest in other brands, especially FP Journe, which have seen a sharp rise this year. And also, I think just people at home, collectors, are looking to diversify their collection, so they're looking at other things that perhaps they didn't look at before, and there are some positive things that come out of this as well.
You know, in your bio, you said that you were exposed to the world of watches and clocks at a very early age. I'd love for you to talk about that, and what fascinated you about your father's collection that gave you that horology bug.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Northwest London. My father was a collector, and he wasn't a huge collector. He had it wasn't a big extensive collection, but it was well varied, and it concentrated on the icons of timekeeping. And in addition to watches, there were also grandfather clocks around the house and marine chronometers. And we would frequently discuss watches around the dinner table. And he would show me his collection from time to time. And as the youngest of four kids, I think I had more patience for it than the others. And, his fascination and his excitement for the watches ultimately transferred to me. But as a child, you don't really realize what will resonate with you later in life. But as I got older, the fascination developed, and I feel very fortunate that I was able to create a career from it.
Yeah, that's great. And it's interesting that the watch industry has long been considered a male-dominated industry. The majority of products being large-scale timepieces produced for these brawny wrists and sold, and sold with the images of Formula One cars and intrepid mountaineers or deep-sea divers. But there seems to be an untold number of women working in the watch world, and many of them in top management posts. Do you see an opportunity now? What is going on with that? Do you see more opportunities for women to grow and get into the watch world and the watch industry?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, I I am the only female in my office, actually, now that I think about it. Uh, I never saw it as a male or female industry. I mean, I do understand that watches like cars are predominantly sort of a male interest. But for me, it was just an interest, and I didn't really see the difference. And I think that's helped me um, propel myself because I didn't really take note of it and I didn't really bow to it, if for want of a better word.
Right.
So, I just sort of immersed myself in it, just like the boys did,
Mhm.
and I'm still here.
No, that's great. And you started in 2014 at Christie's. What was that like when you first started there? Obviously, it's one of the premier brands in the world. Yeah, tell us a little bit about your experience since you started there.
Yeah, I think really the Christie's education master's degree was what began my journey. I was a lover of art, and I still am, but the master's degree in the history of art and the business of art with Christie's really let me reconnect with my love of watches. And I would advise anyone considering continuing education surrounding art and luxury to consider this master's degree. Christie's is really a place of treasures, and I have to thank their educational facilities for helping me further my passion. So that's where it all began. And then when the degree was complete, I joined the watch department as an intern, and I really never looked back. It's a dream job to be able to travel globally. I mean, not now, but generally travel globally to hunt for the rarest timepieces and put together these auctions, which I hope give collectors and spectators a show of history and a show of rarity and just simply magnificence in horology.
And you work with private collectors too?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we have auctions, we have live auctions, and we have online auctions, but we also have a private sales platform where, and it has become very popular because if you have a watch, Scott, you'd like to sell, you don't necessarily have to wait until the auction, which might be a couple of months away. It's more of a bespoke service, and you could potentially sell it tomorrow.
You're connecting the collector with the seller, I would imagine.
Right.
And how do you find the collector, sort of make that match?
Oh, well, we have a large sort of collector base, and it's a global collector base, and I have my list of clients, and I know what they want and what they need, and I try to cater to that.
So, like all companies around the world, auction houses now found themselves in, these uncharted territories when COVID hit. What was it like when Christie's, had to all of a sudden close down everything and pivot to online sales? What was that? Tell our audience kind of what that experience was, what happened there.
Yeah, we closed the office on March 13th, and our specialist teams, we remain in close contact with our clients, every day. In many ways, I think this period has strengthened our relationships because we've had to work with our clients and work together to find new solutions to get consignments and how we can allow for viewings and sales. So, during this period, it's been exceptional transitioning and huge transition to digital, as we know, but also technology has also played a large part. Photo quality has to rise, and capabilities such as 3D viewing or video have had to be enhanced. So there's been a lot of change, but it's also been extremely positive.
Yeah, I mean, you were doing online sales beforehand. I was reading that Christie's had, seen unprecedented online engagement since the lockdown, with year-over-year increased participation, and the sell-through rates, were pretty high. Nearly 35% of the buyers were actually new to Christie's. Who were these new buyers? Were they younger?
Yeah, I mean, since the lockdown, we've had registrants from 93 countries, I think, and 35% are new buyers to Christie's, which is a large percentage. And first time online buyers, I think, was up 158% year over year. So talking about from 2019 to 2020, it's pretty impressive, and I think it's only set to continue.
Are you finding in general that there are younger buyers that are more interested now in purchasing watches?
Yeah, for sure. A large percentage are millennials, which is great because they start collecting sort of entry level. And then I love to work with the collectors to figure out what their true passions are and help them grow their interests in their watch collection. And that's really the fun part for me.
So do you think now is a good time to buy a watch?
Yeah, I think, now is a good time to really be a bit introverted. You have a lot of time to educate yourself, figure out what you love. Apart from investment purposes, watches are meant to be enjoyed. And I think now is a good time to really tap into that. And
I was going to say, what type of timepieces are you seeing collectors buying during the pandemic?
It ranges. I think those who are typically into collecting vintage timepieces have continued on that path. I have clients that were only collecting modern that have now recently turned their interests into vintage. I have clients that are solely looking to adorn their homes because they're staring at their walls more often.
Right.
And their interest is in clocks, let's say, sometimes pocket watches. It's quite varied, but I think that the main trend I'm seeing is a lot more gain in knowledge and a lot more interest in finding one's true passion.
There's a lot of luxury watch brands out there. Which ones hold their value the best and why?
Yeah, I think it's not so much about what brand. I mean, there are top selling brands, of course,
Right.
there are, but I think more than the brand, you really have to look at certain factors to hold value in a watch. And those would be, number one is condition. You want to make sure that the watch is in original condition as much as possible, that it hasn't had replaced parts, that it would also come with its original paperwork. Perhaps if it's, let's say, from the 1970s, you really want to have the original certificate, perhaps even the original sales receipt. Those things can all add value. I would also look at rarity, how many were made, limited editions. There can be a lot of different limited editions. You want to be very careful with that phrase and make sure that it is really something that can hold value. So there's a lot of different factors. I don't think you want to look at just one brand, but you want to look at the watch itself and how it can hold value if you do want to resell in the future.
Yeah, it seems like Patek Philippe seems to be somewhat set apart from the rest of the industry and occupy this unique position. Do you think that's true, and why?
Yeah, I mean, Patek is one of the oldest Swiss luxury watch and clock manufacturers. They founded in 1839. Their history is extremely rich. They've provided watches to very prominent figures such as Queen Elizabeth II, Mary Curie, John F. Kennedy, and the list goes on. They also hold the title of the most expensive watch ever sold at auction. The Grandmaster Chime referenced 6,300 in steel, which brought 31.19 million
Wow.
US dollars in Geneva last year. And they also hold the most expensive pocket watch ever sold at auction, the Henry Graves Super Complication, which reached 23 million US dollars. So apart from all that, if you've ever really held a Patek Philippe in your hand, it's really easy to see the craftsmanship is indeed set apart from the rest, from the complexity of their movements to the intricate case designs. It's pretty impressive. And I think once you really get into the brand, you'll see why they sort of set themselves apart.
Let's talk about the pre-owned luxury watch market. Like other sectors, the pre-owned luxury watch market seems to be growing rapidly. Is this trend spurred largely by younger shoppers focused on, ecological concerns? You're seeing pre-owned retailers like Watchbox and Cron Next are gaining traction. Do you think that will have an impact on these traditional watch retailers?
Yeah, I think it's inevitable. There are a growing number of pre-owned retailers which are easily found by young shoppers on the internet. The pre-owned market is growing. Young collectors are seeing investment opportunities in pre-owned over modern. A luxury item which holds a history can hold as much value and often more than its modern counterpart. Like, for example, you can buy a $3,000 pre-owned watch and it can hold a lot more value than the same price in its modern counterpart. So traditional retailers are really going to have to adapt in order to keep up with all these new retailers, and like any traditional business, cater to new demand as best as they can. But I think also for the consumer, it's important to mention that as there are more and more retailers, there's no doubt more and more questionable retailers. So it's very important to do your due diligence before purchasing.
And the luxury watch business is pretty dependent on on Chinese demand, like many luxury brands. What are you seeing now in the market during and after the pandemic, the Chinese market?
Well, in the market now, we're seeing actually more of a well-balanced contribution in regard to the geographic location of our collectors. Just looking at the Geneva auction that we had a few weeks ago, the majority of bidders came from the USA.
Right.
But as mentioned before, collectors participate from all over the world, the USA and Middle East, Asia, and Europe.
And for a segment that has been traditionally, show in terms of, digital adoption, this recent influx of watchmakers on Chinese e-commerce marketplaces hints at a growing shift in perception. But the luxury watch industry is unlike any other, with a consumer journey that might not necessarily play out as well online. Is the e-commerce really the next right channel for selling high-end timepieces in China?
Yeah, I think no doubt. I think Christie's for sure is investing a huge amount in digital and technological capabilities, virtual showrooms, being able to view watches, but without having the travel is very important for any market, and it's only set to continue. We just have to adapt as quickly as possible. I think that's really we don't want to rush it. We want to do it properly, right. but I think catering to what's happening as fast as possible is definitely what we're trying to do.
So what are some of the interesting lessons that you learned or Christie's has learned over the last 4 months that you will think may stick around in a post-COVID world, or some of the trends that surfaced?
Yeah, I think when situations like a global crisis occur, it's inevitable that people look for comfort in whatever they can. And I think luxury items can provide a certain level of comfort, whether for an investment purpose or simply indulging in things that you're passionate about. With that said, it's no surprise that watches can hold sentimental value and history and can offer the wearer a connection with the past, which I think is more relevant than ever. So history and provenance is very important. Provenance being previous ownership and who owned this watch before you, and what do they do with it? It's a big part of buying nowadays. As I've mentioned before, documentation, proof of purchase is important, and quality and condition, because clients are looking for watches that they can keep in their family and pass down to future generations. So a lot more thought goes into purchases these days, and rightly so. Not only do you want to enjoy what you buy, but you want to get the best example of the product and perhaps want a potential return on investment later.
Right. How do you think social networks, particularly Instagram, have changed the world of watch collecting?
Oh, immensely. Watches, there used to be whispers in the auction room, and that would be really, years ago, the only way that you could sort of infiltrate the watch community. But I think nowadays, everybody sort of wants a seat at the table. And the best way to learn about watches and be involved is to become immersed in the community. And I think social media has allowed that to happen on a mass level, which is great because everyone feels a bit more connected. And the best way, I think the best watch collectors are those which talk to other watch collectors and enjoy them together.
Yeah, actually, when we actually connected on Instagram on your account, I started learning a lot about watch collecting just from that. So
yeah.
I could see how it could play a large role in the business. Earlier this year, data showed that Apple Watch is selling more watches than the entire Swiss watch industry. What are your thoughts on smartwatches and its impact on the timepiece industry?
On the one hand, smartwatches and collectible vintage timepieces are two very different species. One is in essence a computer relying on the latest technology, and the other, let's say vintage watches, rely on expert craftsmanship from decades ago. However, I can see how the advance of the Apple Watch can spur an interest in traditional timekeepers. I think an important commonality is that both Apple products or smartwatch products with those and traditional watches is that usually the earliest and the rarest models can hold the most value. In May last year in London, Christie sold the first Apple computer, and it sold for £371.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So, who knows? One day we might see the Apple Watch in the same league.
So my final question, which I ask all my guests, is the luxury item question. It's perhaps the most fun one of all the questions. So if you were stranded on a desert island and you could only have one luxury item, and what would that luxury item be? And it can't be any form of transportation or anything that requires mobile service. I have the sneaking suspicion I know what the answer is, but I'll wait to you. So what would that one luxury item be on this island all by yourself?
It's very difficult because working in my watch world, I really do love every watch, and it's very difficult for me to choose one. But my first thought is survival. So I would want a watch which would help me in times of trouble. And I would go towards a Rolex and steel, because steel is quite durable. And I would go with a Submariner. While I am a lady and they're quite big for me, even the vintage ones, they're built as tool watches. And I can tell you from personal experience that they could really take a good amount of wear. It's a dive watch, so it's waterproof. And so that could be useful if I ever attempt to catch a fish for dinner. Also, it's automatic, so it winds with the movement of your wrist instead of you having to manually wind it every morning, which would, under the circumstance, be quite a chore. And then I thought about the crystal of the watch. You could even angle it in such a way that it could catch the sun and perhaps alert passing ships. So I really thought about that one. And then my second thought went completely to my emotional stability. And I thought I'll retract all of that and I'll just go for a Gerald Genta Mickey Mouse watch, because like Tom Hanks and Wilson in Castaway, I'm probably just going to need a friend.
I love that. Such a great answer. And as far as telling time, if you go with the Mickey Mouse watch, you'll know it's at least right 2 times a day.
There you go.
But that was a great answer. So, Rebecca, thank you so much. I learned an awful lot about the watch industry. I know my listeners learned a lot about it, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Scott.
That's it for this episode of the Luxury Item Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this useful and entertaining, I would be really grateful if you can share it with a friend or colleague. I would love it if you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It really helps other listeners find us. The Luxury Item Podcast is a production of Silvertone Consulting. I'm your host, Scott Kerr. Until next time.